After the Syrian Communist Party Bakdash, now the Syrian Communist Party Unified requested support from comrades all over the world. Now both big communist parties in Syria have openly and internationally distanced themselves from the armed rebel groups and foreign mercenaries and ask for the solidarity with the struggle of the Syrian people against fascism and barbarism. It's our dignity to oppose the media propaganda and to support our Syrian comrades. Join demonstrations for the Syrian people and against the FSA. Educate your friends and family members. The latest statement by the Syrian Communist Party Unified reads as follows. Dear comrades, the Syrian Communist Party, the Unified, sends you its warmest cordial wishes, wishing that you would have a new year full of victories that solve the case of socialism all over the world. You know that our country, Syria, has been being exposed for more than 20 months to a war launched against it by sources of imperialist states, besides other countries that move around them as satellites. Their aim is to destroy the Syrian state that stands as an obstacle on the road of those trying to impose the plan of a greater Middle East. After breaking down the states in the region and replace them with small entities fighting one another, to impose absolute dominations on the oil and gas resources, to eliminate the Palestinian problem in a way extremely opposite to the interests of the Palestinian people. These countries manipulated the mistakes and shortcomings of the regime on one hand and the popular movements opposing these shortcomings. The movements were peaceful at first. Later they turned into armed ones which received support on a wide scale from alliances that emerged consisting of USA, Turkey, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Turkey occupied the borders exists with Syria to help weapons being smuggled, the entrance of thousands of mercenaries calling themselves jihadists, who built camps for training supporters and allies. Billions of US petrodollars were spent for this purpose. The most exciting forms of psychological war were being resorted to, making use of the services of about 100 TV stations to plant the spirit of sectarianism and ethnic strife between members of the same people. Later, the so-called jihadist groups turned to destroying the Syrian economy. They declared a war against the Syrian people using economic embargo and sanctions. Armed attacks were launched against popular and private properties. Explosives and booby-trapped cars were also used. Electricity generating stations were blown up, wire nets carrying electricity were cut down, oil wells were exploded, tankers carrying oil were burned up, thousands of tons of wheat were stolen and smuggled to Turkey, about 1,000 factories and workshops in Aleppo were stolen. Machines belonging to the factories were sold in Turkey as accessories to the lowest price, irrigation projects as well as animal growing centers were being attacked, roads between cities and towns all over Syria were being closed. Health centers, schools and universities were being targeted. Scientists, doctors, elderlies were being targeted, kidnapped and captured and often murdered. Thousands of soldiers as well as civilians were kidnapped. It was discovered that the armed gangs carried out massacres. The corpses of the victims were thrown down into rivers. Some victims were beheaded. Others were being mutilated. These forms of crimes belong to the Middle Ages. Few days ago, murders carried out a series of crimes by car bombs, especially in Aleppo, where 85 university students from Aleppo University were killed and hundreds wounded. Dear comrades, today Syria is being directly targeted by Turkey through direct war. Turkey publicly admits that it supplies terrorists and criminals with all the weaponry the murderers who belong to 29 countries need. These actions are flagrantly opposite to the international law, which prohibits the use of any country its territory to attack its neighbors. We know that Turkey alone can never do these things without America, European and Gulf states' support. Anyhow, Syria, which is a state of self-defense, is resisting this aggression and inflicting heavy losses on those gangs. Consequently, criminals as well as terrorists are not able to achieve their goals, but Syrians are paying a heavy price in their resistance. Syria never believes that the solution of the problem is a military one, rather it has ever since the birth of the problem called for a peaceful and political solution through a comprehensive national dialogue. In the meantime, the aggressive alliance imposes preconditions for a national dialogue in a way that makes the political solution impossible. Importantly enough, the Syrian government has declared a new peaceful initiative which is completely in agreement with international law, which prohibits interference in the affairs of neighboring countries. The initiative further emphasized the needs for democratic reforms and new constitution, besides a new general and national pact which is to be prepared by all forces, including the opposition. The pact should insist that all military operation conducted by the Syrian Army on one hand and the cessation of the infiltration of mercenaries to Syria on the other hand. Unfortunately, the initiative has been refused instantly by the armed terrorist groups and those who support it and demanded that violence and terrorism continue. 2 days ago, a new development occurred and would possibly change the directions of events in Syria. Of course, what is meant is the sudden Israeli aggression against the Syrian Scientific Research Center near the Syria-Lebanese borders. Such an aggression helps to unmask the real essence of Israel and its attempts to manipulate the current events in Syria to weaken the Syrian army and open new fronts. So far, the Syrian people have to pay a very high price. Tens of thousands of innocent civilians have been killed. Today, Syria is exposed to human catastrophe. About 3 million Syrian citizens have fled their houses and become internally displaced refugees or in neighboring countries, living in unbelievable miserable conditions, needing food and medicine. These refugees appeal to the international public opinion to pressure the governments of the USA, Europe, Qatar and Saudi Arabia to put an end to the siege and economic sanctions imposed on Syria. Besides, they demand that the support to armed gangs cease instantly, because it threatens not Syria alone, but a greater number of places in the world. Dear comrades, your solidarity and support to our people will be highly appreciated by our people in these days. Moreover, it will represent another proof indicating the unity and solidarity of revolutionary powers all over the world. The Syrian Communist Party, Unified, Damascus, 9th February 2013.